welcome to the next episode of the Tealand Knits knitting podcast. My name is Natasha and I'm originally from the UK, but I live on a tropical island called Sri Lanka with my husband Bob. So thank you very much for joining me today. I just want to say a big thank you actually to all of my viewers so far. I really am grateful and appreciate you watching the podcast so much. It's really nice to know that this is being watched and viewed by and helping even a few people. It really means a lot to me, and it's also a lovely way for me to connect with all of my friends because obviously we live quite far away at the moment, and so we're not able to see each other that much. But it's been so lovely having messages from my friends and from family who knit as well and say that they've been knitting along with me, and it just feels so nice. It like makes the world a bit smaller, so thank you very much for supporting me in this. I want to say I want to apologise in case I'm sounding any different to usual. So we've been ill. My husband and I both have a cold. Bob has got worse just today, whereas I'm feeling slightly better. I think that we're progressing at different rates, but yeah, I'm still not feeling 100%, but feeling a lot better than I was. So that's a relief. I'll get comfortable. So I have got my notes here, which I'm relying on as usual. But I also wanted to apologise if the lighting is a bit off today because it is really gloomy. It's been quite gloomy here in Colombo in Sri Lanka for a few days now. It's been raining on and off, but actually raining quite a lot, which is unusual for here because usually it doesn't rain all day. It's usually kind of monsoon rain, and it'll be a big shower, it will just come down and then nothing for the rest of the day. Then it will evaporate and it will get really humid, and it might rain on and off through the day, but not usually the whole day. Like that's what I'm used to in England, is the whole day it's just raining, and it's that fine cold rain sometimes that can just soak into your skin and make you feel ill. The rain here is definitely warmer and the weather is warmer, so we don't have that issue, but it's quite gloomy. It's very cloudy outside. Hold on, I'll just show you what it looks like outside. It's just very misty and dark and grey and gloomy, which is just kind of making the room a bit dark. There's more shadows, as you can probably see, so apologies for that. But anyway, I'll go to what I'm drinking. So thank you to my cousin Joanna for giving me a little tip. So she says she likes to see the different mugs that people are using when they record their knitting podcasts. So this is my mug. It's one of my favourites. It's the New York Skyline, and it's from a supermarket chain in the UK, from Sainsbury's. Yeah, it's from Sainsbury's supermarket, so it's like a really well-known brand, but it's just got such a lovely, like, what's the word? It captures it really nicely, and it's a bit old. Like, I know that the Skyline doesn't look quite like this anymore. I mean, it's obviously an artist's rendition of it because you've got the Brooklyn Bridge next to buildings that they're not really there. But when we've been to New York, I mean, the buildings are there, but they're not really in that location. We've been to New York, we've been on the Staten Island ferry, and we've seen all of the buildings from the river, and it's been really beautiful. So this has got a special place in my heart, this mug, and yeah, I love using it. We bought 4 when they came out because they were flying off the shelves. But I really love this mug. I am drinking Dilma tea. So this is Sri Lankan tea, Ceylon tea. I'll just show you the box. Dilma Ceylon tea. It's just like a standard kind that we get here. And it's really nice because I read it said that it was 100% Ceylon tea, single origin, so it's all from the island of Sri Lanka. And it's funny because I had a friend visiting from Australia and we walked through the supermarket. She said, "Oh, Dilma, that's just Dilma tea, that is so iconic in Australia. That's the one of the main brands of tea that we have." And I said, it's so funny because when I came to Sri Lanka and when we visited for the first time, I didn't think I'd really heard of Dilma. It's not really a brand that we use or hear of much in the UK. So, but obviously in Australia, it's like the main brand. So it was really funny. And actually on the bottom of that box, it does say that it's exported to Australia. So the tea is delicious from that company, but also just Ceylon tea in general. If you get tea that is kind of from a plantation rather than like if it's single origin and you kind of know where it's come from, that tea just tastes so different to what we get in England in tea bags. You can really taste the like the purity, but also kind of where it's grown. I think I did mention before on the podcast, but tea that is grown in the south of the island does taste different, kind of more strong. It has like the kind of taste that we would be looking for to have in the UK for like a strong brew with milk. It's like some of, I would say, Brit's most favourite flavour of tea. It's like that strong, rich flavour of tea. And I'd say that the tea that's grown in the hill country, which is sort of in the centre of Sri Lanka, that is more like, I mean, yeah, that's more like this, I feel. It's a kind of more delicate flavour. The tea has more sort of floral notes, and you can really taste the different growing conditions and the different weather that they get up there, because the tea in the south is grown in a very hot climate, very humid. The tea in the hill country is in a much cooler climate, still very humid, but those different conditions, and also the fact that it's growing on like at high elevation on hillsides that are exposed to that cooler climate, you can really tell in the flavour. So I'm really enjoying this cup of tea. And we also sometimes get gifts from friends who they'll go up to the hill country and then they'll bring back a gift of like a big pack of loose leaf tea so we can brew our own, and that is really, really special. I really love that flavour. I don't think I realised from when we've been on holiday here and then gone back home to the UK, I don't think I realised the distinct difference of the flavour of the tea. And then when we came here, we did bring some tea with us, some decaf tea mainly from England, and the difference in flavour, I mean, decaf tea is a little bit weaker anyway, but the difference in flavour was just night and day. Anyway, I've realised I've been talking about tea a lot, so I'll move on. I also wanted to just mention what I'm reading. So I realised that I didn't talk about it, I think, last week, and the week before I forgot to mention the book that I was reading, which is A Tale of Two Cities, also by Charles Dickens. I'm still reading it. It is getting, I think it's a slow starter, and it's getting more interesting now. I think that Dickens, like, his characters are really intrinsic to his plot and their characters, their personality. And so he's sort of giving you more information and detail about these characters, but because it's kind of in isolation, like you don't understand why you're learning about them and you don't know much about them, it can be a little bit difficult to build all of that knowledge without seeing the interaction between them and the other main characters. But I feel like we're finally coming to that point at which they interact, so I'm enjoying it. It's good. have been a bit distracted, I think, because I'm ill, so I keep going on YouTube and looking at other things, which I will talk about when I've started talking about knitting. So I'm going to get into some knitting, because I'm guessing that's what many of you are here for. So I'm going to talk about my current work in progress. If you saw my Instagram story, which I posted, I think, 3 days ago, when I was really ill, I said that I had a confession to make. So I have been knitting on that green jumper that I knit with the Drops yarn, the Drop Soft Tweed yarn. Oh, that's coming out quite nicely. It's usually difficult to get the colour of this, but yeah, I think that the colour's coming through really nicely on this gloomy day. It's probably quite good for that lighting. So anyway, I was on that kind of road trip. We'd been on the road for a long time, and I got home, was really tired. I thought I better try this on and just see how it's fitting at the moment. And I was so embarrassed because I tried it on and it was just totally the wrong size. It was a much bigger size than I needed to knit for this sample for myself. And it was much bigger. Like I don't know how I got the math so wrong. So that was a bit embarrassing because it shouldn't be. I think when I was actually writing down the numbers, I don't think I really was paying as much attention as I should when something is like a new construction to me. So anyway, I had to unravel the whole thing. I had to frog an entire jumper that I had been knitting on for probably 2.5 weeks, maybe 3. It was annoying, but I think I mentioned in the last podcast that I don't mind so much. It's not like heartbreaking to me. So I did have to frog it. I had to frog the entire thing. It was a pain. I was a bit upset, but I was also excited because I also realised as I was knitting the jumper that I wasn't 100% happy with the detail on it. So the detail was a cable that ran all the way down the front. It was kind of in the shape of 2 tea leaves. I'm trying to see if I can show you on this tea box kind of what the tea leaves look like, but it's very difficult. I mean, if you can see, that is what the tea leaves kind of look like. It's 2 leaves and a bud. I'm trying to get it to focus. Oh, there we go. So 2 leaves, and then there's a tiny little bud in the middle. So this is like the 2 leaves, but without the bud. But I just felt like it didn't look right. It didn't look exactly how I wanted it to. So anyway, I had to scrap it. I had to frog the whole thing. I got my numbers right, and I just tried it on now, and I'm happy to say that it's the right size. I think I was just thinking, I was overthinking this way too much, which I do sometimes. It was just so much simpler to when I actually thought about how to do it, how to size this. It was so much simpler than I had made it. But what I did do was I decided to just sketch out quickly another design, because I felt like this cable, it's so pretty, but just on its own in the middle, it just looked too plain, and it just needed something to make it pop, because I feel like it deserves that, because it was so cute. So I decided to add some texture. I just sketched out very quickly the cable in the middle, and then I just sketched out some knit stitches, some purl stitches, and a couple of other very, very simple cables, and I decided to add in some moss stitch as well, and I've come up with this. which I am so much happier with. It's not blocked, it's still, and this yarn does grow very much horizontally. So this is, I think it will really open up when I block it, and it will kind of take up more of the front. So what I decided to do was, because I do hope that this is going to be more of a beginner pattern as well, beginner friendly rather, because as I said before, you can knit it with the detail or you can knit it without. So you can just knit simple stockinette stitch, you can do the whole thing in stockinette, and basically it would look like that. And then I haven't added the neckline yet, so I still need to add the neckline, but it would be the neckline, then it would just be a plain jumper. And that would be a brilliant jumper for every day. So like a simple, elegant, everyday knit, that would be great. And I actually want to knit myself one without the detail on it. But I also really love this detail because I just feel like it's, it just adds a little bit of a pop. It's gonna be beautiful, I think, for the autumn and especially the winter. I love the colour, and it's very reminiscent to me again of the tea. And I added in this moss stitch, and as I did, I thought, wow, that really looks like there we go. It really looks like tea, rolled tea. So when they process tea, and I will probably do another episode mainly on tea because Ceylon tea is famous around the world and it has been for centuries. When they process tea, it when it's in its like less processed state, the leaves are dried and then they're kind of rolled into little pieces. And so if you've ever had loose leaf high quality tea, you'll see that it's like little rolled pieces, and I really feel like this moss stitch kind of imitates that. So this is definitely a tea jumper, so I'm very happy with it. And I did also add a little bit of detail on the shoulders, on the seam, which I didn't add before. You see that? Yeah. I hadn't added that detail before, but I feel like it's really made a difference. So I tried it on today, it fits. It's going to grow a bit when I block it. I'm quite excited, and I think I'm at the hem now, so I just have to, I have the hem to go, and I'm going to do the neckline first. And yeah, it's nearly finished, and I started it on, when did I start it? Maybe on Saturday or maybe Sunday actually. I think I started it on Sunday. So it's taken about a week, and not of constant knitting, but so it's a relatively quick knit if you have a lot of dedicated time to knitting. It doesn't take too long. Obviously this is with designing as well, stopping, trying it on, calculating, doing maths, but when you've got a pattern in front of you, it's pretty, I'd say it was pretty easy. And also I've tried to make the texture that's in the pattern, on the front, I've tried to make the texture patterns quite easy. So I will say now that if you were to knit it, you only need to use a cable needle on the middle, on the center, which was going to be the original cable anyway. So I'm still finishing this sample. I need to check the sizing and measure it and everything, and then I will eventually write the pattern for that. But at the moment I am still writing up the Cornish tea jumper. That is in the works. I've graded it, and now I am onto the pattern writing, but because I've been ill, everything has kind of been pushed back. So hopefully this week I'll be able to sit down and properly get onto that. if anybody is interested in test knitting that jumper, then please let me know. I will put more of a formal call out on Instagram, but yeah, if you're listening to this and you would like to test knit that jumper for me in one of the sizes, then please let me know, and I will, we can have a chat. So yes, I have spoken about all of that. And yes, I've just written that I'm really excited to start my next project, which is, so I've got two things in mind. So one of them, I think I mentioned last time, there was that I wanted to find a sock pattern, like a go-to sock pattern that I could just pick up and knit on, like continue to knit on when we go out. Because the great thing about knitting socks is that socks are small. They're a small project. You can fit them in a little bag. You can take them out and they only ever take up, what, like this much space on your lap, with this massive amount of knitting on your lap when you're out and about, like in a coffee shop or waiting for somebody. Obviously, if you like doing that, then that's absolutely fine. In Sri Lanka, for one thing, it's warm, but also I feel like when I have a very large project with me, it gets tangled, the yarn kind of gets tangled. If I'm working in more than one colour, forget it. I will never bring something that's got more than one colour and I've knit quite a lot on, because I just can't concentrate. It will get messy. But if I have socks, even if I'm knitting them in two colours and I have the time to have the pattern in front of me, I'll always take them because it's small. So yes, I always like to have a sock pattern on the go. And I have knit loads of socks before, but I really wanted a pattern that would stand up to plain yarn, but also would stand up to and make like variegated yarn or self-striping yarn and other sock yarns, make them like the star of the show by the pattern kind of helping to showcase the yarn. So that's what I'm going for. I'm trying to design a nice pair of socks that I will then be able to just use that pattern on loads of different kinds of socks. I have found a stitch pattern that I really like, so I'm going to try that next. So that's my next project with the socks. I think I'm probably going to finish the body of this jumper first. And then the other thing is I do want to knit or offer these jumpers in more than one format. So I would like to have them available in 4-ply and DK. So this is the DK version. I would like a 4-ply version so that you can wear that as more of like a, what would I say, like more of a spring, yeah, like a winter to spring transition jumper or an autumn to winter transition jumper, or on those on those cold days that you get in summer in the UK, for example, when it's it should be really hot and sunny outside and it's actually like, I don't know, 13 degrees, 14 degrees Celsius, and it's not feeling very warm. That's like a nice layer that you can wear and then take off on the occasion that the sun comes out, which happens a lot in England. Suddenly you get a burst of sunshine and everyone's boiling hot. So I think it would be a perfect transition to have that kind of jumper, but in a 4-ply weight. So I will be working on those projects as well. So now I'm going to talk about a knitting tip. Because my cousin spoke to me and she said that she's really interested, she's excited, she wants to knit her own jumper, and it will be her first jumper for her. And she described a jumper to me, exactly the fit that she wanted, the kind of the construction that she wanted, and even the neckline that she wanted. And she was just describing the Weekender by Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, which I will put here. So the Weekender it was so funny because the Weekender jumper was actually the first one that I ever knit. My very first jumper that I ever knit was the Weekender. I'm really sad because I don't have that jumper. Well, I can't wear that jumper anymore. And the reason is because it was my first one and I didn't know enough about yarn, and I used a yarn that was superwash, which I don't really use. I don't really use superwash yarn anymore. Personally, for me, I don't love knitting with it. I prefer the feel of a more, well, of non-superwashed yarn, and also I do like the fact that you can spit splice. I spoke about that in another episode, where you can join two balls of yarn together by adding some water, rubbing them together, and basically felting your yarn together that way. However, I've actually got some superwash yarn that was gifted to me that I will definitely use because it's lovely. But I have since found that when you weave in ends of superwash yarn, superwash, cotton or acrylic, I think it was Stacey of Very Pink Knits, she has a video that mentions how you should treat those yarns when you are going to weave them in. And she basically says that you need to kind of separate the yarn slightly and like weave it through a strand, like weave one strand of that through your knitting and then tie a knot really tightly, and then tie another knot, and then you can weave in the ends and then snip them. And doing that secures that sort of slippery yarn, because I don't know if, I think actually I do have some, sorry, my yarn is really, I've got my knitting basket next to me and my yarn is really tangled. Look, it's just a bit of a mess. This happens all the time, and if you knit, I think you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can quickly unravel this. And I don't know how helpful this is going to be, but this yarn is Drops Fabel in basically, well, this is a mustard colour yarn. I can't remember what the name is. I'll look it up and I'll put it in the notes for this episode. This yarn is Drops Alpaca in the indigo colourway. I love using this. I also love using this actually. This is great for socks. And I think I've also used it in colour work for jumpers. Oh no, I think I've used it in colour work for my frog jumpers. I mentioned the frogs. I will just say that Roly is sitting here keeping me company. And I think, oh, Toad, I don't know if you can see him, but he's up there just watching. I think that he is blurry at the moment. But I just thought they're like my little mascot, so I should have them come in and show some support. But with the little frog jumpers, I would use this Drops Fable to knit some of the stripes, because a lot of customers would like, a lot of the customers liked the yellow stripe jumpers with the grey dungarees. That was like a favourite colourway that I had, or rather that they chose. But this yarn, this Drops Alpaca, can you see that it's got like, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, it's got a halo, and it's a very kind of sticky yarn. So can you see that the yarn fibres, there's like a lot of hair basically on the strand, whereas this yarn also is, it doesn't have as much, it's not as hairy, and it's been treated so that when you put it in the washing machine, basically on a wool cycle, you can wash this in the washing machine. You can't really wash this in the washing machine. It will felt very easily. So this is hand wash. Superwash is washing machine friendly, hence the name. But with superwash wool, you can't felt it, you can't spit splice it because of the way that it's been treated. So wool is scaly. That's what all of the hair is in this alpaca. This is alpaca, this isn't wool. But the scales in the yarn, those hairy scales, they stick together and they cause your knitting to have like more integrity in that the stitches don't easily slide apart. Whereas cotton, superwash wool and other fibres can very easily more easily like drop stitches, especially with cotton. Sometimes you can drop a stitch and it will just drop because it's so slippery, that yarn, that it's harder. Also, there's something called steeking in knitting, so that's where you knit in a circle and then you can cut your knitting and cut it lengthwise and then open it up so that you can make like a cardigan, or you can make an opening in which you then pick up the stitches and you create an arm sleeve. But you can do it with cotton and with superwash wool, but you have to really reinforce it. If you don't, you run the risk of your stitches coming undone. Whereas with natural animal fibres like alpaca and wool, you do have to reinforce it still. Some people don't, and they get away with it, but that is because this sticks together. It's naturally more like Velcro, and so the fibres stay together a bit better. So all of that to say that I am no longer able to use that weekender because I didn't weave in my ends properly. Unfortunately, the ends started to unravel. It was my first jumper, so I wove in the ends where the yarn ended. Now what I would do is, for example, on this jumper, what I would do is I would knit across and say that the tail was gonna end in the middle of the back, for example. What I would do is I would knit across, and then when I got to the side, I would end the yarn and I would join a new ball of yarn to the side, because the side is like more of an inconspicuous place, and it's less obvious, so that when you weave in that yarn on the side, it's less visible. But I didn't do that, and I had one patch on the front, like right on the front in the middle, where there was a big patch where I had woven in the ends. And because that jumper is reverse stockinette, which means that it's the inside. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, this is the knit stitch. This is stockinette. You can see all of those little V's. It's a bit harder to see this because this is kind of more rustic, this yarn. But this is reverse stockinette. And can you see, you don't have that stitch definition. It's like very bumpy. So that is a load of purl stitches. So weaving in ends on the purl side is very standard. But weaving in ends on the knit side for me was more difficult, and especially when I was a beginner and it was the first time, doing it in that spot just flummoxed me. So I ended up with a jumper that eventually started to unravel in that spot, and I was really upset, but there wasn't really much I could do about it at that time. I think I have still got it and it's all intact, so I should see whether there's a way to salvage it. But I knit it so long ago that it wouldn't break my heart to unravel it and do it again. So we'll see. I'm definitely going to save that yarn for a project because I love the colour. It was like a lovely, like a burnt sienna kind of, really lovely autumnal dark orange colour that I just thought was stunning. And I have ordered some more yarn in a non-superwash that should be coming in a yarn shipment soon. So watch this space and I will show you when it comes. But yeah, so I recommended the Weekender to my cousin as her first knit. It's a very simple, in my opinion, jumper. It was the first one that I knit and it turned out great and it was beautiful, and that was me being like a fairly inexperienced knitter when I first knit that. It's a bottom-up construction. Yeah, and it's just very simple. I've got some tips now that I can share with my cousin when she gets that pattern and uses it, because I've got a bit more of an idea on how you get the right sleeve, like armhole depth, for example, and also how you can adapt the neckline. So the neckline on that jumper is a boat neck, so it's like very wide and shallow. And so there are loads of knitters put in their notes how they adapted the neckline, because a lot of them had it slightly narrower, or for them, some of them it was too narrow and they were able to make it a bit wider. So there are lots of ways that you can adapt that, but I think for a first jumper pattern that is brilliant. It's a really simple one, it's very straightforward. Andrea Mowry's patterns are great. The way that she writes them is very informative. She kind of holds your hand through the pattern process, the knitting process. And if you're a beginner, I think it's a brilliant like jumping off spot. The construction is a drop shoulder construction, and I think I did explain on a previous episode. Drop shoulder construction is basically where you have two rectangles. The front and the back are almost the same. You obviously might have some neck shaping that's different. I think on the Weekender it's not, it's the same. The back and front is the same. This jumper that I have has neck shaping, and it's also a drop shoulder construction, but it's knit from the top down. It's a different construction to the Weekender, but the Weekender is very simple, it's very beginner friendly, very accessible. So I'm looking forward to helping her with that pattern if she chooses to go ahead with it. But what I wanted to also let you know, because she bought her yarn and it is beautiful, beautiful, colourful yarn. I love that the yarn that she goes for, it's always like a rainbow. It's very happy. It's the kind of colourway where when you look at the things that she knits, they just make you happy because of the colours. I am definitely more of a conservative knitter when it comes to colour, but I have got loads and loads and loads of different colours. I mean, just here in my knitting basket, I'll just show you. I'm not as boring as I come across with my knitwear, because when it comes to the frog clothing, I mean, I've got all of those different colours just to hand, and loads more in the basket, and loads more in my knitting cupboard. So yeah, it's just that I don't knit my own clothing in loads of colour, but I feel like I really want to, and I do use colour work. Like I've knit the Yoki Doki tunic by Gudrun Johnson, which again I'll put that in the notes. That was it had like a really lovely band of colour on the yoke, and then it was a tunic that I knit the tunic version, which is like a long dress basically, which I thought would be perfect for those wintry days. So so I do use colour, but I need to definitely incorporate more colour into my knitting. And I just thought that I do have that tunic with me. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, I found it. This is really embarrassing because it has been shoved in a project bag and kind of ignored for the last several months, possibly over a year, definitely over a year actually. So it's quite creased, so apologies for that. And I am going to finish it, I just haven't had a chance. This was also knit in superwash yarn, because I got a really good deal on some superwash from a seller who, she was actually the same lady that sold the yarn that I used to make Rolly and Toad as well, that Falkland merino yarn. And she had some really lovely superwash merino yarn that I bought in grey and in bulk, so that I was able to use it for this dress, and then also I've got quite a bit left. I'm probably going to make a jumper with it. But the great thing is that by the time I started knitting this dress, my skills had improved a lot. So weaving in the ends for this is going to be much easier. Okay, it is really creased. Let me just move the yarn ends that I have not woven in out of the way. Okay. There we go. So I do like colour. I thought I would go for like, these colours are very, very similar to another knitter whose post was on Ravelry as well. And I did use a very similar palette to her. I can't remember her name, but she posted a picture of her in her dress, and it just looked absolutely beautiful. So I did use these colours. I mean, this is kind of like that rustic orange. I used two types of teal, like a teal and a turquoise, and then I used grey. And I did change the pattern slightly. Again, I think I used other design ideas from those other knitters on Ravelry. And also Gudrun Johnson, she did mention, because like for example, on the collar, she did have some colour work ribbing, I think, in that pattern, which I decided to omit because I wanted to go for something that was like very, what's the word, simple. So that is a long time work in progress that will get finished one day. Actually, I mean, the whole body is done. The entire dress part, which really is like the longest part, is done. I just need to knit the sleeves, so I really need to get on with that, because that will be lovely to wear when we're back in the UK in the winter. So yes, so I'm going to help my cousin with her jumper, but she bought this lovely yarn, and when I had a look at it, it is Aran weight. So the Weekender is knit in worsted weight, I think, which is worsted, I'd say, is between a DK and an Aran. It's kind of like heavier than the DK is like the standard weight. It's DK is double 4-ply, so it's like two strands of the 4-ply yarn held together. 2 yarns of 4-ply held together makes DK, but worsted is a little bit heavier than that, and then Aran is heavier than that. So you can adapt any pattern really to use the yarn that you've got. You just need to do some maths. But what I wanted to show you today was on Ravelry, there is a great filter feature that you can use to find a pattern that will work well with the yarn that you have if you don't want to do any maths or find out the like the different stitch counts or adapt your pattern. So just a very, very simple thing. What you can do is you can do the maths, work out how big your jumper needs to be, knit a gauge swatch with the yarn that you have, and then when you do the maths you can work out what the stitch count will be, and then you can choose to knit a smaller size or a bigger size, and you'll get roughly the right size for this new yarn. So that's another explanation in another episode. Sorry, my hair I've left it natural today, but it's curly hair is just very temperamental, and some days it's great and other days it just bothers me. So anyway, today it's bothering me. So I want to show you this great feature on Ravelry. Ravelry is a brilliant website, resource, tool, diary for knitters, crocheters and other types of crafters. Mainly it's knit and crochet, and you can find thousands of patterns on there from many different designers, but you can also then have your own sort of journal or diary where you document your workings of a certain pattern. The great thing is as well that you can then go into that pattern, and linked to that pattern is all of the people who have knit it, with their notes, their photographs, their body shape, their sizing. So you might see a jumper and think, oh, I wonder what kind of, well, first of all, what the recommended ease would look like on me. You can find a picture with somebody else who is your kind of size or shape, see what the jumper looks like on them. You can think, I really love this jumper, but the recommended ease is only 3 inches. I don't like them so fitted. I would prefer something that was like 6 or 7 inches, 8 inches ease. What would that look like? And the chances are, if it's a popular pattern, somebody will have done the same or similar. Sometimes accidentally, sometimes people don't swatch and then they knit their jumper and then it grows a huge amount. Like this yarn, I know because I swatched that it is going to grow horizontally. Not so much vertically, but it will grow horizontally. But if you didn't swatch and you knit that according to the pattern, it would grow several inches possibly. So sometimes people do that, they block it, try it on, they say, oh, it's really big, I think I'm gonna frog it, or I really love it, it's really oversized, it's comfortable. So you will see all of that in people's projects that they link to the pattern on Ravelry. So let's have a look at the Ravelry filter. So you go to Ravelry.com, and on the main page you go to patterns, and in the box you type sweaters, and this will give you a big list of all of the sweaters that are available on Ravelry, or jumpers as we say in the UK. Wait for it to load. And then we need to use the filter. So there are lots of filters, different filters that we can use, and you can select whichever ones you like. I usually will select knitting as the craft, and then we go to clothing, sweater, all sweater. You can choose free patterns if you like, or ones that you can pay for as well. If you wanted to have a look at what the free ones were like, you could do that first. And then we go to the size and fit. So I would usually choose the age or size and choose adult. And then, this is the main one, the weight. So you can choose whichever weight you like. You can go from lace or DK to super bulky, but we're going to go for Aran because for this example we're using Aran weight yarn. And now Ravelry will populate with all of the Aran weight jumpers that are available to knit. And so you can just go through and scroll down, have a look at all of the jumpers that are available, look at the kind of stitch pattern and size that you would like, and make an informed decision. And when you use this filter, you'll be able to find patterns that are suitable for the yarn that you have, so that you don't need to do any major calculations to work out whether your yarn's going to fit that pattern. So it's great. You can search for free patterns, you can search for paid for patterns as well. You can look up men's patterns, unisex patterns, ones for women. You can find colour work, simple stockinette, and you can just browse through all of the different pages, find a jumper that you like. You can have a look at the construction and just see which pattern will look best with the yarn that you've got. Other people may not have knit with this exact same yarn that you have. That's another thing that you can do. You can go on Ravelry and you can search for the yarn that you've got, and then you can do a filter on the projects and see what other projects people have knit with that yarn. But for today, we'll talk about how to pick the right project for your yarn. So maybe someone hasn't knit with exactly the same yarn. Maybe you've got like a colourful yarn with several colours working across the ball. But maybe somebody else has knit with a similar yarn, or the same kind of yarn where it's got several colours, or variegated yarn where it's just got one colour but several different shades of it. So you can kind of get a visual on how your project could look when you finished it. So that's my tip for how to pick a project for the yarn that you have. So if you have any other tips, or if you have found like another way to choose the right project for your yarn, then let me know in the comments, please. Because it's really nice to have a look at how we can help each other with our knitting. There's so many skills and so much information that you kind of gather over the years, and it just becomes a part of you, and you forget that other people just don't know it because they haven't learned it yet. Equally, there's tips that others know that if you don't know it, you don't know it until you do. So yeah, please let's share all of this information together and help us all grow our knitting knowledge. I've been talking for a long time. My throat is getting a little dry. I'm going to have a little more tea. Which is still nice, even though it's going a bit cold. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about was Sri Lanka. So I'm going to go to my Sri Lanka segment. So Sri Lanka is a very fertile country. It is full of native fruits, vegetables, trees, leaves that people eat here that I haven't found anywhere else that they eat. They sometimes chop leaves and put them into a salad from the many trees that grow here. There are also many leaves that are now considered superfoods, and I know that in the West you can buy supplements of these leaves that people here have just been eating for generations. But something else that grows really well are spices. So there is probably a myth, certainly a legend, that when the Portuguese came originally to Sri Lanka, the way that they discovered it was that they were sailing along and they got this amazing whiff of wonderful spices in the air, and they followed the smell and they got to Sri Lanka and they found it because it's just an island full of spices. So many things grow here. We actually have a pepper vine outside. If you saw that video that when I showed you the weather, one of the vines that's growing along is a pepper vine. Then there's one that's going the other way, which is passion fruit vine. We've got a lemon tree, which has no lemons, but the leaves are incredibly aromatic. They just smell like, if you break one, oh, it just like hits you in the face, just this lemon smell. And I've been told that you can use them in a similar way to kaffir lime leaves, which are also great in Thai food. When you use a kaffir lime leaf, you can really taste that subtle flavour that it imparts. So we can use the lemon leaves in a similar way. So we need to experiment. But what I wanted to talk to you about was nutmeg. So nutmeg, we use it all the time in Western cooking. We use it often in a white sauce, in a bechamel, in lasagna. Lasagna often will have like that little hint of nutmeg. We sometimes use it in gratins or potato bakes. But we always think about nutmeg as coming in either powder that's already been ground, or sometimes some of us will get like the little nutmeg seed that we get and then we grate, like in the picture. But did you know that something else comes with nutmeg? There is a spice called mace that many of us have possibly heard of, but mostly not, because we don't really use it very much in Western cooking anymore. So in the Tudor times, they did used to use mace a lot, along with nutmeg and the other spices, herbs and spices that are grown here in Sri Lanka. And there was a lot of trade done between Asia and Europe back in the Tudor times, in the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries and beyond. But a lot of Tudor recipes from the 1500s will have mace and other spices, other sort of what we'd consider sweet spices in them, like cinnamon and other things. But nowadays we don't really have them, and I had a look at some cookies. I have had mace in some Scandinavian biscuits that I've had before from friends, and I've also found recipes online for sugar cookies and other, but it's mainly sweet things. Although I did look at BBC Food and they do have some savoury applications for mace. But I wanted to show you how mace grows, because it's possible that you've never seen this before. And I just thought, when I found out, because I only found out for the first time when we came to Sri Lanka, that it grows with nutmeg like this. So I'm going to show you a video. So here we went to a spice garden, and we were able to see a nutmeg seed, or fruit rather, when it was off the tree. And then our guide cut it open for us. And just look at that inside. So beautiful. So you've got the nutmeg and then you've got the mace surrounding it. I just couldn't believe how rich and vibrant that reddish pink colour of the mace was, and that it grew so closely intertwined with the nutmeg, just around the nutmeg. It just looks so beautiful, so fresh. And the nutmeg seeds that we get here in Sri Lanka, my husband does a lot of cooking, he really enjoys it, but he found that if he uses the same amount of nutmeg that a recipe in the UK asks for, it will always be too strong, and that is because the spices that we get here and the nutmeg that we get here is so much fresher. We will grind it, we'll use our microplane to grate it a little bit, and just that smell of nutmeg that we get is so strong, and the flavour that's imparted is very strong as well. We haven't yet found a use for mace, but I just thought that it would be a wonderful thing to show you, so that if you ever do come across a recipe in future that has mace in it, you'll know how it grows. So that's all from me today. Thank you very much again for joining me. Thank you for all of your comments, your likes, your subscribes, and for any tips and hints that you've given me for either knitting or also the kind of content that you would like on the channel. Until next time, have a great week. Remember to hit that bell icon so that you can be notified the next time that I release an episode of the podcast or any other videos. And remember to tell your friends in case they would also like to watch this content. Thanks again, have a great week. Bye.